What's up, everybody? This is Cyrus, a supernatural author, researcher, and there's no fancy presentation tonight. I just wanted to talk about the phenomenon of millennials, people in, I guess, my age bracket, and the prevalence of atheism, materialism, closed minded skepticism. And I think that this is something that's decreased in popularity since when I was like a kid, and it was Generation Xers who were in my age demographic, and that was even more prevalent in my opinion. And there was much less of a voice for like metaphysical topics or people taking supernatural topics seriously. Today we have very respected people bringing a lot of credibility to the field. To give you an example, Stephen Hawking, who basically said there is no afterlife. Afterlife is for people who are little children afraid of the dark, or something along those lines. And obviously, that was an asinine statement and showed that you can be intellectually of a high caliber and yet have very little wisdom. Because even philosophically, if you want to say that there's no afterlife, that's a strange argument to make because how would you even know, right? It just seems like a um, narrow-minded way of looking at the vastness of the universe. But the point I'm making is that Stephen Hawking, toward the later stages of his life, recognized what would basically call supernatural topics. He was talking about shadow people, the same thing that I talk about on this channel, in relation to out-of-body experiences. He was recognizing that encounters with shadow people were real and hypothesizing that they were people existing on a different spectrum, a different dimension. So he was literally going into the topic of what this is all about: life after death, other dimensions, and existence on different spectrums. We hear this in other public figures as well. We even hear like Neil deGrasse Tyson, another guy who said there's no afterlife, comes back around again, and he recently said in a presentation that I watched on YouTube that we may be living in higher dimensions right now, or there may be entities living in higher dimensions right now that we wouldn't even have access to or be aware of. So this is pretty open-minded stuff coming from today's leaders of the secular movements. And so I think that there is generally speaking, a trend of people having more open minds, but still a lot of people in my age groups, they keep this smug veneer of skepticism and atheism. And I use the term skepticism loosely because it's not real skepticism, it's more like smugness and being dismissive. So if you ask a lot of people in the 25 to 33, 34 age range, they will say unanimously there's no such thing as ghosts, there's no such thing as a UFO. There is certainly no provable way to know about an afterlife, and that materialism or physicalism is the correct answer. And it feels like a relic of like the early 2000s when new atheism really kicked off, and I feel like a lot of that decreased in popularity, but it's still prevalent. I know from a lot of like YouTube personalities I watch, especially like on the political spectrum. There's Dave Rubin from the Rubin Report, and he's like a self-described atheist. There's quite a few others. I don't think I want to name all of them by name. There's no reason to incite a political debate by letting people know who I watch for political opinions. But I've heard people unironically use the term materialist or physicalist to describe themselves. That basically whatever is the meat inside your brain is all that encompasses the individual, the soul, if you will. There is no soul, and yeah, again, materialism, physicalism, that we're biological robots. So now I want to explain why younger people feel this way and how this seems to change. So in this field, I am often the youngest person investigating or discussing these matters in particular groups and situations or conferences or whatnot. Definitely the youngest writer author I know. And all the people who interact with me, who are in my Facebook group, or who are, I don't know, who are people who buy my books, people who I help, who are custom clients, students in my online classes. Everybody veers significantly older than me. The lowest end of the spectrum may hover around my age, like around 30, and then up to people, I've known people in their 70s, 80s. There was even one guy, an old author in the Afterlife Topics group, who pops up every now and then, and he's in 97. That's Alan Valiant. I don't know if it's still Alan Valiant or not. It's like a relative or one of his kids operating his Facebook, but he claims it's really him. So the people involved in this subject tend to be much older than me. It also means that I've come to find that a lot of the Generation Xers, who were like the kings of the smug skepticism, atheism, and stuff back in the 90s, when they were all 20-somethings, they have now switched over, and they're now taking seriously the objective evidence of the afterlife, metaphysical subjects, and things of that nature. Why? Well, the reason is that you can only keep that smugness going so long until life begins to kick you in the ass. Excuse me. Eventually, we will lose loved ones. Some people are able to avoid this for prolonged periods of time. I've known people as old as their 50s who somehow have never lost people close to them. Everybody's just aging to a ripe old age. Maybe they have alkaline drinking water or something that's keeping them so healthy. But most people, they're going to lose their parents usually first. They may lose a spouse, which completely changes somebody's life. They may, God forbid, lose their children, one or more children. And I know many people in that category. You lose a close friend. Sometimes all of the above. I've known people in that category. Siblings. I've lost quite a few people, but I'm a little bit outside the box. My family had some special circumstances, I guess, that led to that. But the point is that we will lose people to a high magnitude as we age. And once you start losing people like that, then the smug atheism, the materialism, the physicalism, thinking that the late Christopher Hitchens had all the answers, stuff it's not compatible anymore. And you begin looking for answers and wanting those answers, and then you may Google what happens when you die. You may catch on that Wikipedia is a bunch of crap. It's run by people with an agenda, basically organized materialism, organized physicalists who want to denigrate anything that they consider to be, quote, supernatural. And so they are on a relentless crusade to smear everything and anything related to this topic. And I think I'll talk more about that actually in my next video. But the point is, people begin looking for those answers, and then they get exposed to the objective evidence. They come to find that the objective evidence was there all along. It's quite level-headed. It's not just people making stuff up. There's a lot of truth behind it, and there's objective phenomena that accompanies it, and many of us have our own experiences, including after-death contacts, that just completely changes our perspectives. So, in essence, time and age cures these ridiculous materialist philosophies. And the awkward thing about being somebody who is or was young, I think I'll say at this point, was young, so especially when I was in like my early 20s, once upon a time, it was especially awkward because you just wouldn't meet people who took these subjects seriously. And oftentimes young people are just so caught up in their own world that they're not tuned in to what it really means to be alive on this planet and facing mortality. They just don't think about it so much. It's not until they get older that these thoughts all catch up with them. So I can't blame younger people for being this way. It's just the way it is. I was a bit of an exception. I can't expect other people to be that way too. But ultimately, I don't push this stuff down people's throats. So if people become curious and they want to learn about the objective evidence of the afterlife, I may direct them to my first book, Understanding Life After Death. But if there is no curiosity, the last thing I'll do is say, "Hey, you gotta, have you learned about the afterlife yet?" Like some kind of evangelist, or somebody trying to convert people to their religion. It's never a good idea. In fact, that will have the opposite effect. All right, well, this is Cyrus. If you like what I have to say, you can help out this fledgling, tiny channel by hitting the subscribe button. May be able to help it gain a little bit more relevancy. You can also check out the description in the video by clicking on Show More. Have some resources, my books, my online classes, things like that. And I'll see you on the next video.